Okay, so talking about executive functioning, the drug exposure impacts, like I said before, that prefrontal and frontal lobe of the brain. That area is over here, that red area that you're seeing. Those are the motor control, concentration, planning, problem solving, speech, smell, which, we don't need that one, but the information processing is that part of the brain. Self-regulation, which comes into that ability to not jump at all the M&Ms on the table and eat them all at once. The adaptive functioning, all of those things that they were talking about in the video, these children can't problem solve. And that was something that I saw too when I would refer children to TIS. And their biggest thing was that they couldn't problem solve. They would drop something, it would roll under the table, and to them, that was where they broke down. They could not problem solve and think of what comes next. Can I get a stick and hit it and get it out from under the table? Can I reach under the table and get it? Can I walk around to the other side? Could I ask an adult to help? Could I ask a friend to help? Can I even try to reach it? Once it was gone underneath the table, that's where they started crying. And that's where their problem was. And that's where I was saying I need help with these kiddos, because that part of their brain, they can't understand rules, they can't follow through with things. There's a lot of stuff that I need help with, and it was like, well, they're not delayed in their gross motor, or they're not delayed in speech. It was problem solving. Like, majority of the times, if it was a child over the age of 1, I would say, what do I do for a child that has trouble problem solving? Like, I have things I can do, but I need an extra person to come in here and help me with an intervention with this family. And so that's where I started learning about all of these things, that you have to teach these things to these children. Reasoning, their working memory, their flexibility. So, all of these little things all are tied back to those routines-based intervention, using a schedule, communicating with the families, and teaching them and educating them about why it's important, why schedules are so important, why a child that normally goes and washes their hands, gets a paper towel, goes and gets their plate, and then sits down is so important. And if you do that out of that order, and they are going to freak out, why you have to kind of sit there and cope with them and help them understand they cannot get past the fact that every single day I do this, and that's the way it should be done. And if you do it in a different way, I cannot calm my body down enough. And if you have someone who's there that's it's just a plate. It's just a plate, get over it. You have to educate them and say, it's not just a plate. You're asking them to do something that they cannot do. It's the same thing as if you ask a child that is in a wheelchair to get up and walk. They cannot do that. These children cannot do that. You're asking them to do something that is just not capable. These are the things that we have to work with. These are the things that we're going to talk to these families about, educate them, and talk to the teachers about, and saying, for problem solving, teach them how to get a stick and go under there and show them, can you use this, can you use a bat, can you use the ruler and get it out from under there and make it a game, and teach them. Don't just look at them and say, why are they so upset? It's just a ball, or go get it for them. Teach them those tools, because they need to use that later in life. Their flexibility, there's not really much you can do there, because it's the same sort of that I kind of think about as children on the spectrum. There's not a lot of room there for flexibility, that if you're going against their schedule, it's very hard for them to adapt. So knowing that it's very important to have a schedule, planning, thinking ahead, doing those things are all associated with that executive functioning. And execution, I talk a lot about too, is that these children cannot do 3 steps. You're asking them to go get the teddy bear, bring it to me, put on your shoes, and go to the door. Think of those those blimps, it's going through, say please, ask for more, learn your ABCs, they're all, and they're shutting down, because that's what you're going to do. That yo-yo baby that's going from being overstimulated to shutting down, that's what's going to happen. They're just going to shut down, or they're going to tantrum. And then, then you're working with a child that's tantruming, and they can't tell you what's going on. So all of these things are associated, and you're right, it's not just sensory that's associated with all this. It has a lot to do with their executive functioning. All of these things are associated with each other. So again, some reported symptoms: impulsivity, reactive aggression, sensation seeking, excessive risk taking and irritability, negative affect, and difficult temperament. Whew, I would hate to have a list of all of those things after my name. These are the things that are going on with me. That's a lot. That's very overwhelming. Social, emotional, behavioral issues, to me, are one of the most difficult because you don't know what they're thinking. You don't know what they're going to do next, especially when you have someone from TIS come in. And I say, he didn't do that yesterday because today's a new day, and grandma dropped off today and not mom. And so grandma is the person who does all the routines and does all the rules and has a schedule and, knows that he likes to wake up and take a few minutes before he eats. And I can't tell somebody that. It's just every day is a different day for them. I don't know what's going to set them off today sometimes. I don't know if it's the fact that I put their Play-Doh on their table the wrong way, or if it's the fact that, I didn't, kiss them on the left cheek. Sometimes it just depends on the day-to-day diagnosis. And so that impulsivity comes out, and they climb a lot. They climb the walls, and they climb the curtains, and they jump over things, and that risk-taking. We learn a lot about child development that these children, I don't know if you guys ever remember seeing the video in your developmental classes where babies, when they start seeing the edge, they won't go past the edge and they won't keep crawling because in their brain they know that that's dangerous. Their brain tells them to stop, that you shouldn't do that, you shouldn't go any further. These children don't have that part of their brain, so they are going to jump off the edge. They're going to leap into things. They're going to crash into you. They don't understand that because that's that part of that impulsivity, that's that part of that risk-taking part of their brain that was affected. And so we'll talk about some different intervention strategies, but talking to them about consequences is a huge part of that. If you fall, you may get hurt. I don't want you to jump. Or let me put cushions out here and let you jump on those instead of jumping on the hard floor, because that is going to hurt your body. So talking about those things. And a lot of these children are diagnosed with ADHD and OCD and ODD. We all know the acronyms for all of those. They are diagnosed with a lot of those, and a lot of those are misdiagnosed, especially if it doesn't say in their file that they had NAS or that they were substance exposed. They're automatically diagnosed with ADHD, and they're put on medicines, and you're just putting a Band-Aid over the bigger problem that's there, and we're not teaching them their skills. And so know that as well, if you do have a child that has these ADHD and oppositional defiance disorder, that's not actually what's going on. It's just that maybe no one's given them the right tools to teach them on how to move past this or to cope with those things.
Do you know if the school system has a category for NAS kids, or are they still classifying a lot of as ADHD and that kind, because they've got to code it a certain way?
I don't, she was asking if I knew about the schools. I don't know about the school systems. I've had several kiddos that were going off to Knox County, and they had a lot of different things diagnosed along with that, but I'm not sure what the code for Knox County.
If they've given them a code at this point, probably not.
And I had kids who went to Knox County and didn't qualify for anything.
Yes,
As
that
of,
happens
like,
too.
June, so.
Yeah, which comes into being, you have to be that advocate. I hate that we have to, our services stop at 3, but that's why it's important from the very beginning to teach that mom or dad or grandma or aunt or whoever to be an advocate for that child, so that way they can have somebody to come in and say, oh, but wait, I need help with this. Because most likely if they don't even qualify for services, there may be something around about way we can say that they do qualify. So maybe it's ADHD or something. I hate to say that, but maybe there is some way they can be qualified for services. And there's actually some advocacy groups, and I didn't have the information here, that work with children that have NAS, work with the mom or the caregiver, whoever, to come into the school with them when they go to those ISP meetings. IEP. I was like, that does not sound right. The IEP meetings, and help sit there with them and say, I've been through this. I know what it's like. Let me be your advocate to help you and sit by you and be your support. So they have services like that someone can help them kind of come in and be be somebody in their corner.
Are you talking about Tennessee Voices for Children?
Yes, that's it. Yes, Tennessee Voices for Children. Yes, I knew I had the resources. So for overstimulation for these older children, and you're going to see some of these things repeated. The same thing, reducing the noise in the environment, no loud music. If you go into a preschool classroom or to a toddler classroom, you're going to see them doing, the bear hunt. They're going to be doing tootie talk. They're going to be doing, the wiggles and all this stuff, and it's so loud. And then you see your poor little child with NAS sitting in the corner, like going around biting and jumping off the walls, and then they get in trouble. And so talking about, overstimulation, being on their level in a classroom full of 12 other kids is probably the most stimulating thing I can think of. So talking to that teacher about that, talking to the parents about maybe this isn't the best time to do this, or maybe we shouldn't even tell her about that birthday party because that may be a little too much to go to right now, or go to only half of the birthday party, something like that to adapt so that child doesn't get too overstimulated. So something that we need to talk a lot about too is doing a therapeutic hold called a bear hug. And it's the same thing as if you were to do with children that have autism, that tight bear hug, that tight little squeeze is very similar to a swaddle because they're getting that same compression feeling, getting that those same chemicals in the brain being released, getting them to calm down. So giving them a nice little bear hug, nice little squeeze. And also, I'm so glad that Teresa talked about the weighted blankets because that's another huge thing. This is really heavy. It's hard to pick up. Weighted blankets. You do have to have an OT approve this. Someone wrote that on one of my responses when I did this presentation at the Building Best Practices, and I totally forgot to mention that. But yes, you do have to have an OT say that yes, this is okay, because weighted blankets are depending on the child's how much they weigh. And so I think it's about 5%, depends on the OT that you talk to, it's about 5% of their body weight. So this was for one of my boys who had NAS, and he was 2.5, and I bought him a weighted blanket. And he loves Mickey Mouse. And I knew he was going to fight it because he doesn't like bear hugs. And he doesn't sleep very well. He only sleeps about 30 minutes at a time. And so I went to this conference, and I was like, weighted blankets, huh? Never thought about that. No one's ever told me about weighted blankets. I don't even know what those are. And so I did some research. I talked to his OT. We got him a weighted blanket. And I was so excited that day to see what happened. That kid, for the very first time in his entire life, slept more than 30 minutes because of a weighted blanket. And then I went and bought everybody a weighted blanket because I did not realize their magical powers. So I'll pass it around. This one's filled with crystal beads. They're filled with all different things like beans and whatever. They come with instructions on how to wash them. But when he would go to sleep, he'd sleep on his belly, put his weighted blanket on, and you could see him wiggle and try to get out of it. But bam, within like 2 minutes, he'd be asleep. And from then on, he slept. And then I got him some resources where we could get him a weighted blanket so he could take home. So he could have one at school and one at home. And so having that amazing resource from Friends of Tennessee is such a golden resource for us, because weighted blankets, what are you supposed to do with a child that's over the age of 1, who can't be swaddled, who doesn't like bear hugs because they don't like to be touched? Weighted blanket, sleeplessness, a lot of the times will go away from the weighted blanket. So I'm going to pass it around.
How heavy is that one?
This one, I think is 8 pounds maybe. I also had a child that was 3.5, and she didn't like the weighted blanket on her during nap time, but she did use it as a coping skill for her. So when she became really upset, and it's a Frozen blanket, so it had Anna and Elsa, on it, because I was like, she's gonna love this. So I got like the design that I knew she would really like it, and I'd say, you want me to go get your Frozen blanket? And she was like, yeah. she'd go to the cozy corner and I'd put it around her like a little shawl, and she would sit there and she would just rock back and forth and read a book, and within a few minutes she was ready. She needed that like moment to calm her body down, move away, and play with her weighted blanket, and it just helped. And so, yes.
Hey, to me, another idea I've heard for coping and calming is to weight a favorite stuffed toy.
Yes.
If they carry a favorite toy, you can also, that's a, I mean, it adds some weight.
Yes.
And they carry it along.
Yes, so what she was talking about is weighting that stuffed toy down or dolly or something. You can always rip out the seams and put in some like heavy beans or something on the inside of the teddy. Don't let the child see you stabbing the teddy. But add some weighted supplements inside, so that way that when that child is holding it, or I've had children that during lunchtime, their whole thing is that they have a hard time sitting still during lunchtime. They have a hard time sitting because their body, and we'll talk about this with motor development, but they have a really hard time understanding that my body needs to be sitting right now. And so we use the weighted stuffed animals and put it on their lap while they're eating. So if they try to stand up, it kind of reminds them, oh, right, I'm sitting right now. So yeah, stuffed animals with weights in them is perfect. Receptive and expressive language. Now, all of these, I'm talking about all of these, that doesn't mean that you're going to get a child, and I'm a little scared that people are saying, I've not had a child that has NAS yet, and I'm going to get this child that has like a delay in every area. Every child's different. Every mother that used substances was different. She may have used, OxyContin in the first part of her pregnancy every single day, and then this other mother only used, narcotics later in her pregnancy and only used it once a week. So you really can't tell. Every person is different, depends on their environment, depends on their body weight, how much they use, what they took. And so I can't tell you that every child you're going to get is going to have all of these things, but more than likely they're going to have something. And so language delay may be something that they display, so that expressive and receptive language. So creating that stable environment so that child feels comfortable sharing their wants and their needs. Using stories, lots of hands-on activities to enforce that child's language development. Using American Sign Language is a huge one that I am a huge advocate for as well, because a lot of the times when we back up and we talk about why is this kiddo biting right now, we have to step back and say what's causing them to bite. Is their environment too overstimulating? Is it that they're trying to provoke play or trying to initiate play with someone? Someone's too close in their space or whatever that may be. So using sign language is giving that child another tool for them to be able to express and communicate with someone, so the delays in language, they're actually having that communication. And those are very little simple things like, learning more, learning milk, learning drink, the very simple ones that you can find online. I'm not going to teach you all of that. I actually have a whole other presentation about sign language. But teaching them all those different tools of like how to say that they want more cookies. By signing more may eliminate a lot of the tantrums that's happening due to that language delay. And also using visual and physical cues. So if I'm a teacher and I know that one of my children in my classroom has NAS and they have a really hard time following rules, they have a hard time executing those rules, I'm going to turn off the lights as a signal that it's time to go line up at the door versus saying it's time to go line up at the door. Because that's a physical signal to them that I can see that means that it's time to go line up at the door. Every day when my teacher plays Rocky Top, it means that it's time to go wash hands for lunch. That's something that we do because that's something that signals to them versus me saying, Johnny, it's time to go eat lunch, and he's just like, no, I'm doing a million different things right now. But I hear Rocky Top playing, or I see the lights go down, and that's a different physical cue. Something also that's a different physical cue is, Gab, where's your sign? I talk about this a lot too. This is a lot easier for a child to process versus you saying, okay, it's time to go, everybody come on, let's go, all right, let's go. Versus this. Their brain can process this better than you saying, okay, come on, everybody, line up, come on, okay, I'll tie your shoes in a second, come on, everybody get up together. And so this is a better physical cue Same thing that goes with the lights going on and off, seeing this, and doing sign language, saying stop, things like that. Thank you.
Tiffany,
Yes.
I was just gonna, so many of them have had the, like the CEFL, the Vanderbilt EDU/CEFL, and so many of the new backpack series that are on that website, if you haven't been on there in a while, they have a ton that they've added that have a lot on so many of the social emotional components and impulse control and getting attention and all of those things. If you haven't checked it out in a while, so many of those resources really go hand in hand, of course, with any children that we're working with, but especially in looking at some of those executive functioning
Yes.
skills and impulse control building and behavior strategies for both families and for classroom. They have a classroom part and then a family part.
Yeah, this CEFL website is absolutely fabulous if you've never used it. If you ever have a child that has any sort of socio-emotional or behavioral issues, CEFL is a great resource. That's where I do, like if I have a child that's biting, I go to their website and do a lot of forms on there for the parents, a lot of education tools. So it's really great. I think I may have put the website on here in a second. So you're going to see the child overreacting a lot to separation anxiety, going from one adult to another, showing no preference for a particular adult. That happens quite a bit because of that attachment. They need that one person to attach to. And a lot of times in that community, especially if you're in a biological family, they're going to be going from one person to the other because they're going to grandma because grandma watches this child on Monday because I have to work, and then Tuesday dad's going to watch him, and so they're going to a lot of different families and they're not attaching that relationship with one person, and so that happens quite a bit. We know as educational folks that we know that that's not a typical behavior. Children should have, separation anxiety at a certain point. Children should preference one adult or two adults over a room full of strangers. I had United Way come through with the tour one time at Great Starts, and there was about 150 of them on a bus that came in. They told me they were not going to come in all at once to come and do a tour of our facility with all of our children that have NAS. And so I was freaking out because, two adults in a classroom is too much for a child. 150 adults walking through. I was just like, this is never going to work. And I actually had a kiddo that was out sick that day. Well, if they're out sick, they're actually across the hallway with their mom in the community room. So they're not really, they're just hopping and skip away. So these people are coming through and doing a tour. And I didn't realize the kid had been vomiting that day and was stuck in the other room with his mom watching cartoons. And when the tour came through, 150 adults walked through this door. And instead of this child freaking out and thinking, this is a lot of people, a lot of strangers I don't know, and run to mom, he gets up off the couch and is walking up and hugging people. And although that was very cute, that was not a normal behavior that a child should be displaying at that age. That child should not run up to a room full of adults and just be, welcome them and, welcome to my home. That's not a normal behavior. Children shouldn't preference, one adult to the next adult to the next adult to the next adult. They should have that main caregiver. Or control over emotions, lack of tolerance and for frustration, like we talked about before. Having a hard time expressing their wants and needs, and a higher negative affect. I talked a little about this before, using consequences when you're talking to that older child that obviously can understand what the consequence is, talking to them about what that means when you jump off of the bed, what could possibly happen, whether that's a natural consequence of them getting hurt, or it's a logical consequence of saying you jump off the bed one more time and you are going to lose Elmo tonight. That's something that is a consequence, and eventually they'll pick those things up. Showing a decreased compliance with simple routine commands. So just even washing hands, I need you to go wash your hands. I need you to go use the bathroom. Those things are just a very hard thing to do with toddlers and preschoolers in general, but when you have a child that has this sort of disability diagnosis, it's even harder because you have to think 3 steps ahead. You have to think all the things I need to say to this child. I need to think that I can't just go behind them and tap them, come on, let's go to the bathroom, let's go. That's not gonna work because you're not giving them all the different things that they need. I need to get in front of them and say, okay, in 2 minutes, it's time to go to the bathroom. Because we know that's a routine before we eat lunch or after lunch. And then, okay, we have 1 minute until we go to the bathroom. Okay, now we're going to go to the bathroom. And okay, if you can't go, then I'm going to pick you up and take you to the bathroom. So those are just some little things that you can talk to parents about, using consequences, using warnings. Warnings are a lot, mean a lot to them, not warnings and after I count to 3, you're going to get a whooping. That's not that warning that but saying I'm going to give you minute increment warnings and tell them in 3 minutes you're going to get a diaper change. So that way they can start processing that in their brain, because it's going to take them a while to understand. If I say I need you to go get a book and put it away, or you dropped that book, go put it away, within 5 minutes later, that child, like, oh yeah, and goes and gets the book and puts it away. Sometimes it takes that long for them to process things. Just go very slowly. So, and then we talked about physical signs during transitions. So another thing that I see with these older kiddos are they do a lot of daydreaming. They do a lot of times where it looks as if they're not there. They just kind of stare off into space. During that time, I've had some teachers ask me, what do I do when this child does this? And, they were like snapping at him, get out of it, come on. Don't do that. Do, again, respecting the child. They will eventually get out of that. What that is doing is their brain is coming to a stop. Yo-yo effect, think about that again. It's being overstimulated. You may be asking the child to do too many things, and their brain is having to literally take a moment and pause. Imagine it's like when your computer has the little, timer on it that comes up, and it's taking a moment for it to compute everything because you're asking it to open like 6 tabs at once. That's what's going on in their brain. You have to give it some time, because what you may have asked them to go get the book, go put it away, go get your shoes, and come back to me is too much, and they may just need a minute to process all of that. So that means that they look like they're withdrawing, they look like they're daydreaming, they look like they're not there. After a little bit, if they're still doing that, you can get in front of them, squat down and get on their level and say, Joe, would you like some help with that? Would you like me to go get your shoes with you? Would you like me to help you do this, or can you do it on your own? Those things are respecting the child. It's also trying to get them to refocus, because they're just shutting down is what's happening. Their brains is just in overload. They can't process all of that. And also helping them identify those emotions. Are you feeling anxious about this? Are you feeling scared? Do you not want to go get your shoes because you don't want to go outside because it's raining? All those different conversations, helping them talk about that. Yes.
Just what Anna said about the backpack series, there's a handout called How to Give Clear Directions that kind of says everything in that slide. If you ever want a resource, I use it a lot. How to Give Clear Directions on Cephal.
On Cephal?
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Okay. See, Cephal's great. Y'all need to use Cephal. It's a wonderful resource. Okay, so temper tantrums. We even do like mini series of temper tantrums parenting classes, because temper tantrums are pretty normal for a toddler. That's why I talk, the terrible twos, because of temper tantrums. As educated people, we know really what temper tantrums are, what's going on. It has a lot to do with language development, lots of things that they can't say, that I'm really upset right now because you won't give me my teddy bear, and I really wanted my teddy bear, and they can't say those things. It's related a lot to maybe sensory issues. There's a lot of things related to that. Temper tantrums are going to happen, but how we react to them is how that child is going to do after that, how they're going to process all of these things. So temper tantrums is a healthy release of rage and frustration. So protecting the child from harm is probably your #1 thing to do, talk with the parents about. I've had some very intense temper tantrums with children that have NAS. I've done a few interviews for staff while that child was having a temper tantrum in the next room, and I was like, that person's never coming back here, which is also why I had a lot of turnover rate, because of the temper tantrums were so intense for some of these children that they would bang their head, you know, they couldn't get away from things that they weren't going to hit their bodies because they don't understand that banging my head is going to hurt, because that's a risk-taking move, that's a very impulsive thing to do. They don't think ahead, they don't have that executive functioning to know that if I do this, that it's going to hurt me. So their temper tantrums can get very extreme. So removing things that are in that area that's going to cause that child to get hurt is important to know. Remaining calm and using a soothing voice is not the easiest thing to do, not the easiest thing to teach. I really like it when they do it in front of me with a parent there, because then I can model those things. It is a lot easier for me to model how to talk to a child during a temper tantrum than it is for me to tell a parent how to do this when we're not in the moment. So that is one of those things that I would say, okay, we're going to get down, we're going to remain calm, everybody's going to take a deep breath, because ultimately what I tell these parents is that you are a superhero, you have a super cape on right now, imagine that, because you have the power and you are in control. And that is something really important to know, that you have your invisible cape on because you are in control, which means you are in control over your emotions enough to talk to this child, to say, I understand that you're frustrated right now, but we have to leave the store. We are leaving. Talking to them calmly, using that calm voice is going to get them a lot further than freaking out and yelling and screaming and spanking. Anger obviously only escalates that child's frustration, so you're going to keep playing tag with that anger, and you're angry, and then you're going to get angry at them, and then they're going to get angrier, and nobody's getting anywhere. So really talking a lot about that, and not shouting and threatening. Everyone needs to be in control. Another thing, I know that you all know a lot about probably temper tantrums and a lot about all of this, but the one thing I want you to take away from temper tantrum is do not use timeout. Do not tell the teacher to use timeout. Do not tell the parent to put a child in timeout, because everything that we have learned today about executive functioning and impulsivity and that part of the brain and problem solving and all these things, and you're asking a child that physically cannot sit still because of something that's happened to them, and you're telling them to be in timeout for 5 minutes, is not okay. It's not. It's not ethical. It's again asking that child that's in a wheelchair to stand up and walk when they can't do that. They don't have the tools to do it. And so putting a child in timeout, especially in the beginning when these parents just automatically jump to timeout, have a naughty chair or whatever that is, you're asking this child who physically cannot control their impulsivity at this point in their life. We're talking about 2- and 3-year-old children. We can't ask 2- and 3-year-old children to sit in timeout. They don't understand that. They cannot process it. And so there's different things that we can do. There's redirection, there's consequences, there's many different things that we can use, but timeout is not going to work for these guys. So I like to talk about that a little bit, because you have to just think about the child. Think about what they're going through. Think about what's going through their body and their brain. It's having them sit down and restraining them is not going to work. And obviously don't interact with the child until they're calm. That's one of those givens with temper tantrums. I'm not going to talk to you until your body is calmed down. You think that I'm coming over there and letting you hit me. Like, I'm just going to sit over here calmly, and when you're ready for a hug, I will be right here, because I love you and I care for you. But I'm not going to let you hit my body right now. So I will sit beside you, but I'm not going to sit right there where you're going to hit me. So being calm, being in control, talking to them like a human being, and just giving them that natural space for them. If this over here in this pile of blankets is your place that you want a tantrum, that's fine. I'm not talking to you until you stop screaming and stop hitting me. I hope I'm not scaring anybody. All this, I think this is just temper tantrum 101, but you're going to see a lot of temper tantrums with these children because of that social emotional behavior. So this is one of my new slides that I put in last night. for cognitive and social emotional interventions strategies together. Implement strong use of routines and schedules. That's just given for what we do and what we're trained to do. They have to have that regular schedule to understand. Avoiding or abrupting transitions, or avoiding abrupt transitions. So instead of just saying, all right, we're gonna go, let's everybody get on your shoes, we're gonna go outside. That's very abrupt. That's why you want to give those warnings by saying, okay, everybody, I'm gonna turn off the lights. In 3 minutes, we are going to go outside. That doesn't mean for just childcare, that means also at home. Like, Johnny, in 3 minutes, we're gonna go to speech therapy. In 2 minutes, we're gonna go to speech therapy. Mommy's getting on her shoes right now. Johnny needs to go get his shoes on. In 1 minute, we're going. So doing that sort of talk to them and routines will help a lot with that transition process. Fairness, firmness, and consistency. That's another part of that. If you're gonna give a consequence to a to a child, you have to follow through with it. You can't say that if you don't do this right now, then I'm gonna come over there and take away your doll, and then you never do. That's not being consistent. And so teaching the parents too, that same talk of consistency and following through. Emotional self-control of all the caregivers. Avoidance of excessive touching, because the more you touch them, sometimes the more that gets them a little bit riled up. So the more I touch them and say, I'm gonna have you come on, let's go, and like I'm trying to encourage them with my body. I'm doing like the child move, like trying to get them out the door. The more touching, sometimes the more triggers them a little bit. So instead of physically touching, using those signs, the stop sign, the lights going off, and the warnings. And then special positioning techniques, that would be setting yourself to be in a certain position. So if I know that I have a runner that's going to go out the door, probably not going to stand over here where the door is over there. I want to position my body so I can say, oh, nope, stop. I'm not going to let you run out of this room. Position yourself to where you know that you got to think 3 steps ahead of these kiddos. And then protection from bright lights and noises. So those are some of the resources that we were talking about. The CEPHL is that first one. You can just Google CEPHL, and the first thing that pops up is that website. It's a great website. 0 to 3 is also a really good website. And these are just different websites, but these particular ones have a lot of information about social, emotional, and that sort of stuff. Challengingbehaviors.com is another one that's pretty good that I've used. And then of course your books about routines based. That's something that is really important because you can use that in everything. Because these kids are going from transition to transition to transition to transition. They're going to breakfast, to playtime, to being all done with that, to going to speech therapy. Those are routines, they're a whole day. And so if you're implementing those warnings and saying, in 3 minutes we're going to be all done eating. And then, okay, now we're going to go and we're going to bond because we're getting a diaper change today. We're going to change your diaper. There's all these different things that are implemented there.